Yeah, hello and welcome to this video, which covers round 6, I think, of the Tata Steel 2017 tournament. Yeah, let's get going. Round 6. Not that many decisive games today, but some interesting ones. And I'm going to... how am I going to do that? Let's do this like very quickly. Look at each game and I focus on a couple, but let's do this one by one. We had Aronian playing Carlsen, that for a long time was world number 2 against world number 1. Levon is not that high rated at the moment compared to what he was. This wasn't a super interesting game. We saw a Slav defense, which is Carlsen's choice nowadays if he wants to stay solid against d4. And it worked. Yeah, it worked. They had this kind of position, and Aronian had a little something like optically. It looked like maybe he has a slight initiative, but Carlsen defended precisely. Yeah, I don't want to go in this in any detail. This looks nice for white. Yeah, but at the end, these two don't do that much. And black is able to expel that queen. Yeah, that looks a bit annoying, but you get rid of it and ultimately get the position sorted. There was a trade with this little combination, and well, this dissipated into a draw quite quickly. The next game I want to check, I just do it like in the order of my notes, which has no particular order, I think, is Giri Nepomniachtchi. So Giri has currently has I think a run of 14 draws in a row, which not quite untypical. Anyway, we have a knight off, and this time g3 is played. We've seen two games with a3 already in this tournament, and now g3. This is actually, I think, a somewhat underrated line. I think an interesting option for white. What I'm surprised about is that most players, top players, go e5. You rarely see e6, which still should be a very decent Scheveningen. Not that e5 is bad, it's just I'm a bit surprised that it is such an overwhelming favorite of the top players. So knight de2, knight b3 is also possible. And this kind of setup. I have to say that I'm not a big expert there. It's just that when I looked at this game, this kind of position, if we go here, this kind of position feels, in my mind, rather comfortable for white. He's got very decent control over d5. I mean, it's not easy to establish a piece there long term with the bishop being on g2, but you still have a good control. Black has not gotten b5 in, so there is no direct counterplay. And in general, black is not looking very active here. So I would think that this is quite comfortable for white. However, I mean, a slight edge. However, it gets concrete very quickly. Rook c8 by Nepomniachtchi. Okay, that's a half-open file. And now rook e1, h6. h6 is probably played, first of all, you can make some luft for the king, but knight f6, you maybe don't want to face bishop g5. Bishop h3, now, interesting move by Giri, looking at this pin. And, the next move is just a blunder, it seems. Black now played rook to c6, and this move just fails. He had a couple of alternatives. Bishop c6, for example, is what the engine wants to play. It's not the most logical. I mean, it's not a logical follow-up to rook c8, because in some cases, like after a queen move or so, you sometimes have to play this. But the thing is, what he did not work. He played this, and if you like, you can treat this as a little tactical exercise. White to play and win is a bit much, but to be much better. And the move is bishop h6. No, takes, check, and that's it for the knight. And this is just a pawn, Yeah, basically black blundered this h6 pawn, or well, with the capture the g7 pawn if you want. And white now is of course much better. It is not a totally simple win because black has bishop d2. This double attack here. So he gets to take on c3, and white has this double pawn now. This is in itself not such a big issue. Those pawns are weakish, but those are as well. And Giri is a very good technical player. He sometimes misses the conversion of good positions in a tactically very messy position, but he's excellent in technical play. And he does not really allow much here at all. f4 is good, yeah? Threatening this, and just dynamically playing dynamically. Black took it, and e5. That's very nicely played. e5 does look to take this. I mean, in a situation where you keep the pawn, and first and foremost, bishop e4 is the idea. It's a nice move. Now, black bishop c8. You go back. And now the d6 pawn gets taken, and the d pawn is quite obviously extremely strong. And it was very nicely played now. Rook c6 is not the most precise move, and there was some improvement over that. Oh, where is it? No, I'm sorry. Yeah, rook d1. Rook d1 is cute. Yeah, bishop h7 is the idea in case of rook d6. And here he could have defended a little bit tougher here with bishop d7. The position is very bad for black though. King f8, however, what was played in the game is losing immediately due to bishop a6. Yeah, nice tactic, takes d7 and promotes. And after this capture on g3, Nepomniachtchi resigned. He cannot stop the d-pawn simply. Yeah, bishop b5 and d7 is impossible to prevent, or the immediate d7, depending on what black does. So a fairly easy win actually for Giri. Nepomniachtchi really blundering with rook c6. So this is the end of Giri's drawing streak. He ended it with a win. And this is the thing with his drawing streaks. He draws lots of games, but he's very rarely worse in those games. So he's mostly being comfortable with his draws. And this is not such a terrible style to have. It's just that if he would convert more, he would be an absolute monster force to be reckoned with. Okay, he won this game and is now on +1 in this tournament. It's easy to calculate, with someone who never loses. Yeah, he wins a game, he's on +1. He wins another one, he's on +2. Okay, so that was Giri's game against Nepomniachtchi. And the next in my list here, in no particular order, is Van Vele with white against Dmitry Andreikin. Yeah, that was a really long game and a super complicated game where I feel I can probably not give you a totally complete, correct with everything coverage, because it's just such a monster of a game. Interesting opening here, a6 by Andreikin. What is the point of this move? It looks a bit strange, right? What is a6 doing? It has an idea. When Veli plays knight c3, we will see what happens after that move. I think one idea of a6 in this particular position is that after g3, you might just go b5. I know it looks weird, but this is not so bad, it seems. You get to fianchetto, and if you can trade b against c pawn or get this tension going, this is not so bad. It would increase your control on the light squares quite a lot. It doesn't feel all that bad. There are ideas like that against the English opening where the pawn is still on d2, and why shouldn't it be possible with the pawn on d4? So interesting. However, knight c3 was played, and now Andreikin just went d5. So we transpose into a queen's gambit declined, where black essentially has played the somewhat exotic looking move a6. But that does actually have some points. The most the crucial choice here for white is, do you take on d5 or not? If you don't take on d5 and play, like, let's say bishop f4, a very normal move in the queen's gambit, you have to reckon with black taking, and here b5 is just now a possibility, as a6 is useful for that. So something like this is definitely a playable line for black. Or you can do the same thing after bishop g5 and black takes. Yeah, compare this to the Botvinnik variation, where c6 would be played instead of a6. I mean, c6 has one purpose, to play b5. And why shouldn't a6 serve the same purpose or a comparable purpose? This is a playable position. So quite interesting. White now took, and now you get the Queen's Gambit declined exchange, where again a6 is played. This, however, is not that bad a move. I mean, it does have some points. We see how it goes. Bishop g5, bishop e6. This is interesting. This is now a possibility. As queen to b3, black has a couple of options. He can even play knight bd7 and just ignore b7 being attacked. I've seen b5 being played even, which is yeah, a bit on the loose side maybe, but it's very interesting. Even that again is possible. If white takes, rook b8 and rook takes b2, it's this is interesting. It's absolutely unclear. So e3 and normal development, let's say h6, bishop h4. Yeah, and of course black now can play with other setups. For example, bishop d6. This has been played by Magnus Carlsen, for example, in a yeah, it only says Doha 2016. That must have been a rapid or blitz game against Ryazantsev. Bishop d6, this setup. It's interesting. It's a Queen's Gambit declined setup where black has relatively active pieces and this somewhat unusual configuration. Now, there's interesting things to explore, really. And Draken played g5, totally different approach. And now knight h5, getting the bishop. Or trying to get the bishop. It can run away. Bishop e5, knight g7, and h3 takes before bishop h2 comes. Knight takes, and I will take stock a little bit later, like here. Yeah, I think this is a very unconventional position. Black has played this h6 g5, weakening himself in the process quite a bit, but he's gotten the pair of bishops as a long-term asset, and he certainly succeeded in getting yeah, something that you can fight with. It's not just a boring position or something. As it sometimes happens in the Queen's Gambit declined exchange, it can be quite a dull experience for black. Here I think, however, he overdoes it a bit. He plays h5 now. A move like c6 probably was better. One point is that white has the idea to play f4, f5. And if f4 now, I think it's not as good as in the game by far. As in a situation like that, queen b6 followed by long castles is quite decent. Looking at this with a check. It's a fairly, I mean, it's fairly is wrong. It's a really unclear position. It's really tough to assess. This, however, and then f4 gets to be a problem as the immediate f pawn push is threatened. And yeah, Draken now went g4. But after f5 is in quite some trouble. He had to go back, and here queen a4 would have been a good move that Venveli could have been played. It's the thing is, after this, it's easy to see that bishop d7 is good for white, as you just take on d5 at the end. So this, and takes. This is easy, and certainly was calculated by Venveli. Everybody checks queen a4, yeah. But oops, I'm sorry, that's what he played. But king to f8 is a different matter. Here maybe he didn't see the right continuation. I don't know, I can only speculate. It's queen a5. This is not a very natural move. Once you spot it as a candidate, it's kind of once you spot it, you see that it is very interesting. Let's say as c6 is not possible, it's a pin there, and you just threaten to take this with the queen. Here black is in extreme trouble. It's probably I mean, the computer says white wins basically. So queen a4 would have been very strong. I'm not quite sure what the miss was there. f6, was played, knight to e6, and now black is okay. Yeah, however, it's a super complicated position. I mean, takes here, and Van Vele even grabbed on h5, reaching this position. And it seems that from here he didn't play it well, even though, yeah, we are basically dealing with a rapid game now, and in a very murky position. Probably e4 here was to be preferred with a better game for white, but this is all computerish. I mean, it's all computer supported. It's a totally different animal to play it over the board. He played queen to e2, and now knight c5. And this is helpful for black, quite clearly. Yeah, we got the trade now, and if he takes stock, it's 5 pawns against 6, but the white pawns are all completely, not all, but those, they don't coordinate at all and are mostly weak. Van Vele tried to keep the h5 pawn with this g4 push, but black now is better. Yeah, he's got the pressure here and will win the pawn. This ending now is better for black. Yeah, it's just better for black. And we can fast forward a little bit. Better for black does not mean winning, by the way. Yeah, but we can fast forward a little bit to the rook ending. You can look at this, I understand, but I want to focus on some moments in the rook ending. So here we have two pawns against 1. Those endings, in comparison to rook and pawn against rook, are not really ones that you can learn by heart. There are some motifs that you can know and recognize, but this is mostly a job of precise calculation. And playing those correctly can be extremely difficult. And they actually made a couple of mistakes at the end that the computer finds quickly, but for a human player under time pressure, it's extremely tricky to do. We can start here on move 46 here after f5. After f5, rook b8 was played by Van Vele. That this is a mistake, however, you see relatively quickly in the game. The most straightforward move here would have been b5, and I think also the move that I would always recommend to play in a practical game, because this is the clearest try to trade off 1 pawn. We have to be clear on that being a draw. Yeah, here it's an easy draw. So black will play c5. This is the only try. He has to keep this pawn on the board. And now after rook b8, c4, b6, not only moves, but the most logical ones. You get to this position, which is a draw. The white king can come over. So this was a way to do it. I'm kind of skeptical. Is that really a draw? It should be a draw, right? This is what my notes say. Yeah, white is coming over here, right? King c6, king f2, rook d3, king e2. Oh, is that a draw? Doesn't look like a draw. That's lost, right? That's a lost ending. Oh, what is that? Did I just mislabel my notes here? I labeled rook f5 with equal. Okay, no, that's not equal. That kind of puts b5 into question. I'm sorry about that. I mean, the thing I know is that this is a draw. This is what the engine calculated to a total draw. I looked at this with some of those cloud engines. That is a complete an engine draw, let's say. Yeah, okay, rook b8 was good. I'm sorry about the confusion about b5. I just mislabeled my notes. But well, the end of this line really was lost for white. Okay, rook b8 This was played in the game. And now after king f4, it seems that black is indeed winning. b5 now was tried.
Check.
Rook c2, king back to g1, rook b2, b6, and now king f3 was doing the trick. King f3. The line there is b7, check, king h2, king f2. Yeah, we have to see that if white is trying to trade here,
check,
that the white king is ages, I mean a long way far away from the c-pawn, so that will win quite easily. So again, king f3 is the line, b7, check. King h2, king f2. Yeah, and you really lack moves. Yeah, king h3 is made, so you have to move the rook. I just wanted to show that, and then you get to this ending. King g3, however, was played here by black, and after king f1 everything seems to be in order. However, it is still quite tricky, and there is a moment a little bit later. Rook b7, f4, and now rook b8 played by Van Velde seems to lose, but you know, this is basically a blitz game now, that we have to always take this into account. Seems to lose. King d1 seems to be a draw, and we have to check how it was a win here after rook b8, king f2, and it's quite nice. King f2, b7, f3, and this is nice now. Yeah, if you look at this, it's basically a Zugzwang. If the rook moves, then the pawn is falling. So it's a king move, and he only can go here, after which rook d2 and rook d7 is extremely strong, because now again a rook move costs a pawn, and if white plays king to c2, black plays rook e7, king takes, king e2, and will promote. It's really nice, yeah? Black is looking at this, is shielding on the e-file, and promotes. It's very nice. In the game, king g3 was played. Check. Rook b8. And now it's funny. If black plays f3, b7, we have the same position, but with now with black to move. With white to move, he loses due to Zugzwang, but with black to move, it's a draw. Yeah, king f1, I mean a king move here would allow the check. If you go king f1, yeah, you lose this for a draw. And what else is there? If black moves the rook, for example here, he's going up, and again it's a draw. It's really funny. It's the same position, but it's a big difference whose move that is. Yeah, in the game, oh sorry, that was the wrong button. In the game, king f2 was played, rook f8,
check,
and a draw. Yeah, so there were chances for black to win this game at the end, but yeah, it is always extremely difficult from the practical point of view if you are very short of time. It's a pure calculation job. It's not like, oh my god, this guy doesn't know his rook endings or so. It's just extremely difficult in that limited time. Adiban versus Wesley So the Indian fighter here against the tournament leader, and we got a King's Gambit. That's cool, right? Don't see that too often in top level chess. Yeah, interesting. In fact, the King Bishop's Gambit, I think it's the name, which is even rarer than knight f3. But this is maybe the more interesting move. I'm a little bit unsure there how to how to evaluate that. Well, So certainly did not expect that, and he played d5, and he got a decent position, d5, and now knight f6. Now that's the idea. With the bishop taking, black now is getting the bishop pair, and yeah, develops easily. A move like g5 is also possible instead of bishop d6. In the game, we see that white got to occupy the center really quickly, and he got this. So white is a pawn up. However, we have to see that there's lots going on in the e-file, and with f6 and queen b6, black gets active play. White has not castled and has to untangle himself a little bit. In the game, black got enough activity to make it okay for him. And I don't want to analyze this in detail, but you see that black has pressure against this pawn, and the way it turned out, everything got traded to equality. Yeah, they continued a little bit, but it ended in a draw. So an exciting start with the King's Gambit, but sometimes you can play unconventional stuff and try to do things, but it's sometimes just in vain. If correct play is happening, it often will end in a draw. But interesting, seeing the King's Gambit on that level. The next game on the list would be Elyanov Karyakin. I don't want to check this too much. So, surprisingly, Elyanov went e4, which he doesn't do all that often. We had a d3 Berlin. It wasn't all that exciting. Maybe Karyakin was a little bit better at some point, but probably not something that did amount to much. We had the game Hare Krishna Wojciech, which also I don't want to check all that deeply. It was quite interesting, but we have to make some compromise there if it should not be a super long video. I want to get to the by the way, the Hare Krishna Wojciech game was a Ruy Lopez, slowish Ruy Lopez. I want to get to the Report Vailly game, because that was the this already sounds like a wacky game. Report is the most creative and one of the most aggressive players around, and Vailly is an extremely gifted tactician, so he's not the kind of person who wants to extinguish every fire that Report is setting. So let's see what we got. Ooh, Petrov. It doesn't really sound like something interesting, but just wait. Here we go. Knight c4. That's not a very usual move against the Petrov. And objectively speaking, I also don't think it is particularly great. But it gives the game a fresh character. Knight takes, queen e2, queen e7 is forced, and now knight to e3. And here the concrete play begins. Knight d5 is a threat, which black is covering, renewing the threat. And now, of course, Vailly could have just taken on c3, but he just went back. This is a bit more interesting, this move, as knight takes c3 is accelerating white's development a little bit. Knight f6 is not helping with that. Now, interestingly enough, Report went g3. I say interestingly enough because g4 is actually a playable move, and whenever he has the opportunity to play stuff like g4, he usually does. So I was a bit surprised to only see g3, but of course it's objectively a good move. Black tries to sort his position a little bit there. The queen wasn't great on e7. Maybe bishop h3 comes into consideration. So Report did disappoint a little bit by not playing g4, but he can play b4 instead. This is actually a good move. I mean, it looks wacky as usual, but it is a good move. It just tries to go b5 and make something out of the long diagonal. Okay, d5. If you are faced with play on the flank, you should respond in the center. This is this old saying. It is usually quite right. There are some of those old rules that don't really apply that much in modern chess, but if you can play in the center, it's usually a good idea, no matter if the other guy plays somewhere on the flank or whatever. Central play is usually good. So b5, knight d4, queen d3. That's not the most natural setup, c2, d2, and the queen in front of it, and the knights in front of the pawns. It's a bit weird, but it is quite interesting for concrete reasons. c5, covering the knight, castles, and castles long. So okay, white does not have his pawns in the center, but his pieces are active. Yeah, those knights and the bishop, they are focused on the d5 square. The rook here has something to do potentially on the b file, and the bishop on c1, which really is kind of hurting at the side of this pawn, sometimes has a job on b2 or a3. So it's unconventional, but not bad. Rook e1, using the e file potentially, and Vailly went h5. Yeah, I mean, this is not the kind of position where you should shuffle around. Yeah, white will do stuff on the queen side. He's already on b5, so black should get counterplay. h4 to stop that. And in this position, Vailly also could have played more conventional moves, like yeah, I don't know, knight f5, for example, is what the engine, I think, suggests. But there are a couple of ideas, but he plays the most aggressive move, g5. Yeah, as I said, he's the kind of guy who wants to fight fire with fire, not sitting around. So g5, yeah. So b6 was played by report. He also could have taken on g5 immediately, but I think inserting b6, a6 here, this certainly makes some sense before taking. So you could analyze this without b6, but b6 is a very natural human move, and objectively also okay. Knight g4 and knight c takes d5. So what did black get for all this? Yeah, he gets this aggressive play with h4 going, but it objectively seems to be not correct. The move g5 probably was a bit too risky by black. We will see. h4 now was played, and now white could have gotten a good position. And I did not see the press conference if there was one, but I would be interested to know what exactly it was that report did not evaluate correctly. It is, of course, an extremely sharp position, and yeah, if I would play that myself, I would probably lose with both colors quickly because I would just totally mess up the complications. But I still would be very interested to learn what his calculation problem was, because knight takes g4 now seems to be excellent for white. First of all, taking on g4 does not work due to bishop b2. Maybe this was an issue. Bishop b2 is very strong. The idea is to take on d4. For example, if black takes, you take here, and then you check. And the point is that this kind of situation, oops, king a8, and here is fantastic for white. He's threatening bishop b7 checkmate. So yeah, black has to take, and here we see that it's simply too much. White wins a full piece in this position. That doesn't work. So the only move would be bishop d5, but then knight f6. And again, we want to take on d5. The only move that continues the game here would be bishop g2, sacking the queen. Knight takes, check. Now white has to sacrifice it back, yeah, as this is a disaster. So takes, and bishop b2. And here white is better. It's not a win or anything, but white is definitely better. He's up material. And let's say rook here, takes, is a better position for white. We can just count, yeah. It's 6 against 4. It's opposite colored bishops, makes it tricky. But I mean, white is better. 2 pawns are 2 pawns. Yeah, this was played. It's extremely tempting. Yeah, it's extremely tempting, but it does not seem to be enough to an advantage. h3 is correct. And now he had to take on g4, it seems. It is a crazy line, but that seems to be still okay for white. Takes, check, and takes. I know it looks crazy, but at the end, if you do a count, you see that this is material-wise okay. Yeah, it's funny. This, this, and this is hanging, and this is hanging. The computer is just saying equal. Yeah, it's typical computer stuff. But who's going to find that in a game? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, what report did does not work. I mean, it does not work, but it looks extremely dangerous. Yeah, he sacrificed on b7 here, and the black king has to run to c6. At first sight, you're absolutely trembling probably with black. Yeah, your king is running around, but at the end, it does not seem to work. Yeah, the problem is that while black's king looks exposed, there are not that many attacking pieces from the white side, and black has a very quick counterplay, yeah, based on the h pawn here and the ideas here on the light squares. Yeah, looking at this a bit deeper, there's not really a big attack. It looks terrible at first for black, but there's nothing much. Rook f1 is now what the computers play, but this is the kind of thing that no human would play. Yeah, black goes here and is fine. Bishop g7, king can go to e7 most of the time. He's a piece up. That was tried, and black just recaptured.
Check.
Yeah, white was throwing a little bit more wood onto the fire. There was a repetition, and now king to d6 by Vailly. He repeated once, and then after having checked out that nothing threatens, even with the king on d5, he went there. Yeah, this is of course funny. Yeah, the king on d5 with the queens on the board. But look a little bit more closely. There is not that much going on. In fact, white has to work with checks exclusively. If he does not, h3 check and the light squared pieces, the piece here is finishing it off. Black is threatening mate himself. So you can, for example, give the check and black just takes. Yeah, I mean, if white would not be checkmated himself, yeah, you could think of maybe a preparation move to set up a check for the king. But you simply have no slow move. I mean, if you play any, I just play a slow move to show. It's h2, h3 check. And something like that is made. That's the thing. Yeah, report tried rook e3, h2, and here queen c6 was a safe move. There were alternatives that also won, but queen c6 is good. He had to basically allow the queen trade now. I know black is 2 pieces up. So after this, bishop b2, rook e8, Vailly won the game as report resigned. Yeah, extremely unconventional game again by the Hungarian player. And it seems he was okay in the complications, but it's one of those cases where you, there's I'm lacking an expression there, you get burned by the fire that you set up yourself, basically. Very interesting game though. So a win here for Vailly in this, this tactical battle. So after round 6, we have still, I think, Wesley So leading with a +3 score, followed by Carlsen, who's on +2, and Elyanov, who's still on +2. Carlsen has had 4 draws with black, which were somewhat uneventful, but it's also we have to see that his opponents played it very close to the vest, not risking anything. And then he's not the kind of guy who plays something totally wacky, yeah. So draws in those games, and he won the 2 white games. Round 7, which is played on Saturday 21st, sees Carlsen playing white against Giri, which is interesting. Giri hard to beat, but Carlsen definitely would want to try with white, yeah. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the coverage for round 6. Thanks for watching.